Start recording. Okay, so I'm here with Burn These Books, and actually, I don't know if we've actually introduced each other. My name is James. I run the Uninformed Leftist channel on YouTube. I kind of got started on. I've always wanted to have a political channel for a while, but my channel really kicked off like last year with the whole fracturing between Hassan and Ethan Klein, and I just covered that, and then it's kind of just been like grinding from there. How did you really start getting into content creation on YouTube? And also,
Uh,
what's your name? What's your name and pronouns?
that would be important. Yeah.
Yeah,
I go by Bob or Bobby online. He, him. Um, yeah, I was gonna say the Ethan Klein and Hassan thing. They fed a lot of people with that
right,
conflict. Like I'm
for
glad you
sure.
you got to make some money off that. Yeah. So like you said, I run the Burn These Books YouTube channel. I write the videos, and I'm the guy like doing the voiceover. And in the most recent one, like my face is in it. And then my buddy Jacob does the editing for the most part. And
Oh,
sometimes we'll
nice.
swap in other people that like I know that can edit videos as well, just because we both have lives, we have full-time jobs, so it's pretty
Right.
tough to do like a regular YouTube schedule. But yeah, how I got into it was um, I guess during the pandemic, I started like I just kind of fell into watching video essays and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I want to say like Some More News was like a big one that got me into this stuff originally. Um, so I'd like watch stuff like that, and then slowly I realized like, oh, if I actually want to like understand these topics, I should probably start reading books. I feel like there's just a lot more out there than random millennials telling me what to think about this stuff. So I decided to start reading, and in doing that, I don't know, more and more, I was like, I feel like a lot of people aren't doing this. So maybe I can like try to get people to read. And like, I think I could probably do this at least as well as some of these other people doing it.
Yeah.
So Jacob and I, like, Jacob has a background in art stuff and things like that. So uh, I just asked him if he wanted to try it one day because I knew we had like very similar politics, like left leaning stuff. And he watched a lot of the same stuff I did. So I asked him if he wanted to go for it. And then we did. And we made a video about the book and the movie Lone Survivor, like the Mark Wahlberg movie that everyone
Oh,
else in the world
yeah.
forgot about. But I was rattled about it because I watched it during the pandemic. And I just like held on to that hatred for a long time until I made this video essay. And I expected like 30 people to watch it. I thought if 100 people watched it, that would be like a huge victory. And as of right now, it's sitting at like 1.5 million views or
I
something.
know, dude. I'm looking
Um,
at that right now. It's crazy. But
so
that's
that was the first
awesome. That's
video
so
we did.
awesome.
It's crazy. Like so there's a lot of stuff in there that, I think we'll get into it when we talk about the Contrapoints thing. But I realized with that first video that, I made that very much for like someone like yourself to watch, like a left-wing person to be
Hmm.
like, oh yeah, war crimes are bad. The military shouldn't kill so many people in Afghanistan. But it ended up mostly being shown to like people that love the military. So we got a lot of like death threats, a lot of people calling me gay or whatever. Like it was just like a really poor reception for the most part. But I think that like negativity just had it keep getting thrown in the algorithm. So the lesson I learned from that was like, oh, if I had just like framed this video differently and not cited Noam Chomsky like 30 seconds into it, we probably could have like convinced a lot of people of
Mm.
like the overarching message of it. So like ever since then I've been like, okay, I gotta be like more measured in how I present these ideas. And maybe in the conclusion I can kind of go a little crazy with these things. Uh
Yeah, that's
and yeah,
something
so
that
that's
I
kind of
always
how we
find
ended up here.
interesting, like the idea of who your target audience is.
Hmm.
So would you say that
Yeah.
when you first made the video, you're like, okay, well, I'm making a video for leftists to watch, and then after you got the response to the video, you kind of had a perspective shift, and you're like, maybe I could make this video not essentially only for leftists to watch and people that already agree with me, but maybe I can make more videos to try to change people's minds on things. Would you say that you had a perspective shift, or you just always had that goal and you kind of went at it from a different tactic after that first video?
No, yeah, it was definitely like a perspective shift because yeah, I guess I just never really thought that I would end up on right wing YouTube before left wing YouTube. So like, because I didn't have a big Twitter following. I had like a several hundred followers, but they're all pretty left wing people. So I
Hmm.
figured that's how it would grow naturally. But instead, the algorithm just picked it up. Um, and yeah, so ever since then, I've always been like, well, what if this ends up in front of someone who is like agnostic politically, even? Which is, I mean, in a lot of cases, it does. We've had quite a few people comment who are like, damn, I didn't like know any of this, but now I'm like very much on your side. So I don't know, more and more I've been trying to push into that. And I think in this video, I did that in some ways successfully, but I don't know if you read the comments, but a lot of people thought I was a bit too soft and were mad at me for that too.
Are you
So
talking
I
about
don't
the
know, maybe there's,
Contrapoints one?
yeah, yeah, we got a lot of, I guess it's like bad empanada viewers and people like that who were pretty rattled that I didn't, I don't know, call her names or whatever, but I don't know. I guess that's just not really the vibe we were going for.
Yeah, yeah. It's always interesting because, like, with the internet, your audience, your target audience, is almost out of your hands, due to the algorithm. Maybe it's a little bit different for people that are like more consistent, but like video essayists that are just kind of making videos about things and serving it up to the algorithm gods. That's always interesting to me because I totally see where you're coming from, but like the rhetoric you use and the way and your framing of issues definitely depends on the people that are consuming your content. Um, but yeah, I think that there is a space for everyone like that. I think there's a space for people like Bad Empanada who are just going to confidently be like, Contrapoints is upholding American imperialism, and his audience is going to understand that. And then I think there's
Oh yeah.
space for people like you that are like, I'm actually going to do a polite response and put that into the title of my reaction or like my response video to Contrapoints and make a 50-minute long thought out rebuttal to everything that she wrote.
Yeah, and like the thing is, and I don't really know, there's no way for me to put this in a video essay that would make sense, but like I'm not even against the idea of like being mean to people with bad opinions. Like if you look at our other videos, like our Dave Rubin video is like scathing. Like because I think Dave Rubin's like a bad guy, right?
Yeah,
So I'm okay with being like I still lay out all the arguments, right? I go into depth on all the stuff that I think he's wrong about, and then at the end I'm like, okay, this guy's Satan. Um, but mostly because I know that there's not really very many Dave Rubin viewers who I think, in 2025, can a Dave Rubin viewer really be persuaded into being like a leftist?
right,
Probably not.
exactly.
So I'm okay with just kind of going scorched earth there. But when I look at someone like ContraPoints, I'm like, her statement, aspects of it, if I thought she was right on the facts, then maybe the logic of it would make sense. But I just think she has the facts wrong. I don't think that she's like a soulless ghoul or whatever. I think that if she understood how like the US Israeli relationship works better, then maybe she would be more on board with some of these ideas. And I never really had any indication that she is someone who's super pro Israel by any means. But even if, she was, um, I don't think that we have enough like political capital to just cast out everyone that is a soft Zionist or whatever. I think we have to win those people over still. So like I can understand like someone like a Bad Empanada who, makes these videos where he's like scathing or whatever. I get it, but I think that there is a lot more work we have to do to win a bunch of these people over before we fully just say like, okay, Zionism is like no go. We're not being polite with these people anymore. We got to win some over first. We got to get a pretty stellar majority before we start taking the gloves off.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because I do think that ContraPoints might fall into that category of person that's like, it's a complicated issue. Maybe
Oh yeah.
I don't know what you would put a label on that, but it's not like, it doesn't seem to be ideologically driven. It seems to almost be an avoidance thing. I'm going to turn a blind eye to this because I know that it's like, it's dramatic. People get angry on both sides. I'm just going to say it's a complicated issue and ignore it. I think ContraPoints kind of falls into that category, and I would lump her in with guys like Brian Tyler Cohen. I would lump her in with, do you know the soy pill? I think he is a perfect example of someone in that category as well. Um, and I see what you mean. Like, you can't really cast those people out. They're still gettable. I just don't know at this point if like correcting them is effective at all. But But yeah, I see what you mean. Where it's like we shouldn't be mean to these people. We shouldn't like castigate them. You should try to like correct their objections and highlight where they're wrong. As you say, you think Contrapoints is wrong on the facts themselves, and then you laid that out well. So I appreciate that perspective that you're coming from with it. But it is interesting, like when you're talking about when you're making videos like this, are you thinking that like obviously Dave Rubin, you're not going to make a video about Dave Rubin for Dave Rubin, but are
Yeah,
you in
I'd have to
in the
dumb it
back?
down a lot for that to work.
Dude, I watched your Dave Rubin video yesterday, and I had forgotten that he started off as a stand-up comedian. And those clips you
Oh my
included were
God.
so funny. I was cracking up. Like
It's so bad.
his joke was just like any gay people. I think people when they're nice turn gay. It's like
Right. It was
that's
if
his
you read
joke.
books, you become bisexual. You
Oh yeah,
know, like
that's
it's
what it
the
was.
words, and then and I'm like listening to this. I'm like, if this guy, this is like a perfect premise for like a Come Town bit. Like Nick Mullen would knock
Right.
this out of the park. But like Dave Rubin, it's such a ridiculous premise. Like he really thought that he was just gonna say that and then find the joke halfway through. I'm like, it's just not. That's not what Dave Rubin is built
It's
for.
yeah. A more skilled comedian maybe could have made it land. But anyway,
Yeah.
when you make like a video about ContraPoints, or like I'm looking at your live section when you're reacting to a shoe on head video, are you thinking that it's like the audience is gettable, or are you thinking that maybe the content creator themselves might start changing their content, might either like retract the post, correct the post, um, like on the issue of Israel and Palestine, might start posting better about Israel and Palestine, posting like more factually about it, or are you just like the ContraPoints? She's in that category of it's a complicated issue. There's some people in her audience that agree with it, that it is a complicated issue, and I'm just going to kind of ignore it and or like throw my hands up and huff. And you're like, this is a video for her audience. Or like, what's your kind of your idea on how you're like who the people you're targeting in this example is?
Yeah, I mean, with this one, I think what made me really want to make this video was like number one, I was just already in the middle of doing a bunch of Israel Palestine research. So
Mm,
I had actually like the book I mentioned and like that I hold up in it, The Only Language They Understand by Nathan Thrall, which is basically just the basis of the whole kind of first chapter of the video. Just this idea that um, the US was handcuffed in any way and could not pressure Israel. And the
yeah,
book basically makes the case that all the success the US has ever had in this relationship is by pressuring Israel, actually. And when we stopped doing that 30 years ago, 35 years ago, stuff stopped getting done. Like ever since then, it's been, Netanyahu has been the prime minister of Israel for over half of my life. And it's because no
right.
one reins him in, right? Like he gets to do what he sets out to do. He gets to keep setting up settlements in the West Bank, right? There's no US government pressure to actually stop this illegal practice, right? So that was part of the reason was I was just like, I'm in a very convenient place right now in my research where I feel like I'm very well suited to respond to the arguments she's making here. But what set me over the edge was looking at her subreddit, which now the video has been
Mm.
posted in her subreddit as well. So I got to see like the reactions to it.
I
But
have not been
uh,
on that part of the internet, but I'm now I'm curious.
it's so the thing is like ContraPoints. I think I think the subreddit got brigaded probably after the statement. I assume that a bunch of like Hassan and Bad Empanada people like showed up. And so the mods naturally like start cracking down, right? Like anyone
Hmm.
who's has, and you always overcompensate in those situations. The moderators always just start banning people who are like mildly critical, right? I don't know if that actually happened there, but I imagine a little bit of that always does.
Yeah,
So
I think
I
that's a
was
good
reading,
assumption.
yeah, and so I'm reading what people are saying, and I was just like surprised because I remember and I think the more I checked, the more I realized that the ContraPoints videos that I really enjoyed were actually a lot older than I realized. Like I was under the impression that like 2 years ago she was making stuff that really resonated with me, but it's probably more like 4 years ago or more. Like I think I was just when I got into it, I was watching the back catalog. So like the videos about like capitalism, like all that stuff. And I think she's kind of moderated quite a bit over time, and increasingly her videos are less, I don't know, like they cover stuff that I care about less, right? Like a Twilight video is not really for me.
Hmm.
Um, so I think a lot of her fan base has like largely become detached from what it used to be, like the more hardcore lefty people. And I think with this statement, I would imagine a lot of the more left-wing people either left or were kicked out or whatever. And so I was just surprised to see how many people in her subreddit were like acting as though her statement was like really strong, like just on a factual basis. And like the idea that leftists just couldn't understand that she was engaging in pragmatic politics and their idealism was like too strong. Um, she's the adult in the room and that sort of vibe. And I remember reading it and being like, you guys are just wrong. Like that's the facts don't match up with what she's talking about. So that's when I was like, this video is different from most of the other ones we've done where a Dave Rubin video, I'm scolding
Yeah.
Dave Rubin. I'm scolding a Dave Rubin listener. The Lone Survivor video, the very first one, I'm calling, I'm using some choice words for the Navy SEALs. Uh, and in this video, I was like, this is different. I can't win a Dave Rubin enjoyer. I can't win someone that is a right wing conservative and loves the military to my cause. But someone who has been watching Contrapoints for years and doesn't necessarily know much about Israel Palestine and just thinks that she's making a persuasive case for why activism on this issue is just virtually impossible, I think those people can absolutely be swayed. So
Yeah.
this isn't the kind of tone I'm going to strike for probably most of our videos going forward, but this is like a very specific niche where I think it makes sense to go, okay, guys, especially in this environment where, you know, Bad Empanada and Hassan and Vosh and all these people are like going pretty hard against this woman and immediately turning off her audience from wanting to listen to them. Whereas in my video, I'm not calling her names, not doing any of that stuff. And we did have quite a few comments from people who were like, yeah, I was actually on Natalie's side. And then I watched this video and now I think you're right. Like she's wrong on the facts. So like that's, I don't know how many of those there are, but I would say there's a surprising amount of people once you got past all the people who were mad that I was not angry enough in the video. But
Well, it is funny. Like, I think you are, because I'm looking at the Contrapoints Reddit post about your video right now, and I just think it's so perfect that it's at exactly zero karma. Like it's an equal number of upvotes and downvotes for the video.
perfect balance, man.
It's a perfect balance. And I think you like, I do think that this video was effective in maybe not changing these people's minds, but like reaching them, like the type of rhetoric, the kind of the platform of the video did get through to people, and it did like as you said, kind of like disarm them when it's like guys like Vosh and Bad Empanada, all of these people, all of these abrasive figures, all of these
Yeah.
brash guys. I do think that like this type of rhetoric is definitely effective. And yeah, I'm seeing
Yeah.
that like you wrote some responses to people's comments, and then in all of the comments are like, I don't understand what he's trying to say. Then you clarify what you're trying to say, and they're like, well, that's actually extremely fair. Thank you for responding.
That's the thing. So this video, when we posted it, I almost messaged Jacob to be like, "We're never doing this again," because this video is stressing me out so much. Because
Mm,
all the other ones, like the people we had our sights on, were completely ideologically opposed to us for the most part. So
yeah.
like any ruffled feathers there, like who cares ultimately, right? Um, I still do wish we, framed some of this stuff differently, but overall, like we haven't lost, I think, that many people that we could have otherwise got, all things considered. But this one, uh, at first, we had like a bunch of people because we've cultivated, I think, a pretty left wing audience. So we had a bunch of people commenting who were like, just being like, why would you be polite to this woman? She's like a piece of shit, whatever. And it was like a mixture of that and I don't know. I just felt like I was defending myself a lot more in the comments because it was a mixture of that or people who were like mad that we were targeting her, right? So but there were two comments in particular. I couldn't tell you what they were saying off the top of my head, but they were
Mm,
really long, like hundreds of words long.
yeah.
And I responded to them like in equal depth. Like, I think one of them was like 800 words, my response. It was crazy. I'm typing essays to these people in the comments to
I
explain
know.
all of my points. And every single time that I did this, I think maybe with one or two exceptions, the people would respond and go, like clearly were rattled when they commented originally. I would respond with, this whole thing being, I appreciate you like laying out your thoughts. I do my whole thing, and they would respond being like, yeah, maybe I don't agree with all this stuff, but I appreciate you laying it all out. Like, thanks. And like that was it. Like no one really wanted to like keep arguing with me after that. And it was the same thing in the subreddit. There was two people I replied to. I'll probably do more later. But in both cases, they were like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, in one instance, they then pivoted to talking about, well, but Hamas, and, maybe
Oh
I'll
yeah.
respond to them later. But like, I think the idea was, I think they maybe thought what I was doing was in bad faith, especially because this is 2 months after this whole controversy passed. That's just,
Mhm.
I recorded all this stuff when it happened, but, the nature of editing, we all have jobs. It just takes time. So I think once I actually get in there and I kind of explain further, they're like, oh, damn, this guy's like not an asshole. So yeah,
Right.
I think that I can win them over a little bit more. I just got to keep doing the work, I guess.
So I know you just like wrote a video essay on this, but I think one of the most important points in that essay is your, and something that I spoke about a little bit when I was DMing you. It's kind of like your political optimism, and it definitely has to do with like the only language they understand. Um, but because you do see a lot of political apathy coming from liberals that are criticizing leftists. Oh, why are you fighting for a better country and a better world for every marginalized person? And then essentially the argument, in my opinion, and feel free to disagree with me, but like essentially the argument seems to boil down to you should abandon some people in order to get tangible benefits for like the majority. Abandon some minorities so that the majority can benefit. And what and just to kind of like paraphrase here, like what would your response to that be? Because I think ContraPoints essentially said like um if you criticize Zionism too much, that can lead to anti-Semitism, and it also can cause 2024. I'm looking at her statement right now. Bitterness. She says much of the online left spent all of 2024 single-mindedly focused on Palestine, and then complicity of the Democratic politicians in sending aid to Israel. This campaign had the following effects: 0 Palestinian lives were saved, and it may have slightly contributed to the re-election of Trump. So essentially, it's like criticism of the left for focusing on Palestinians, which can be rephrased as focusing on the rights of a minority at the expense of the majority. So, why don't you kind of summarize how you feel about that issue and maybe like the part of your video where you spent addressing that fourth point, bitterness, the ContraPoints laid out there, and
Yeah.
like what you think we can do to kind of address that political apathy.
So I think like we added an intro and a postscript to the video, right?
Hmm.
Originally we shot it in like July, around the time that all this stuff was happening. And then I shot the beginning and very end a couple weeks ago. So like not long before the video actually came
Okay.
out. And the reason was it, sucks for Natalie, but around the time that she comes out and says, it just seems like, we got to replace everyone in Congress to make stuff happen, and that's going to take, decades. So, we can't ask for too much. And like right after she says that, then all these photos come out of all of these starved children in Gaza, right? And
Right.
immediately the political landscape on this changes. Everyone, like Democrats are now coming out and being like, even like Richie Torres, I think, was like, Israel has to let aid into Gaza, which was like unthinkable. Richie Torres only talks about how great Israel is and only tweets about Hamas. Like he doesn't even talk about his own constituents. And the fact that he was like, yeah, Israel needs to like let aid into Gaza, like we have to do something. Like things can change very quickly. And
Yeah.
this doesn't just happen based on like these photos in the newspapers. It's because people have been beating this drum
And I think
since
that was also
October
right about
7th.
the time when like France said they were going to recognize Palestine as a
And
independent
then
state.
the UK, then Canada, yeah,
Yeah.
like the dominoes start to fall very quickly. And
Right.
like
That was
if
bad
if the
timing.
United very bad timing. And like it's if the US were to fall, like if the US were to recognize a Palestinian state and say that, aid to Israel is conditional, like the game's over. Like literally every country, like we're all just following the US's lead on this thing. Um, I just don't believe for a second that all of these politicians in like the US and Canada and the UK are like legitimately as diehard pro-Israel as people make them out to be. I think it's very much like an opportunistic position to hold. Um, and like I can give you like an example. Like in Nathan Thrall's book, he talks about
Hmm.
how the in Israel specifically, they have really no incentive to stop the occupation of the West Bank because they get all these benefits from it. And there are some drawbacks, right? Like you will have like a suicide bomber, right? You will have
Yeah.
certain individual actors in the West Bank will take up arms. It's rare because it's very difficult, but like it happens sometimes. But it the benefits outweigh the costs by like 100-fold. So there's no reason for them to stop. And the whole case he makes is like you have to make it so that there's a cost to these things. You have to like make Israel want to change because it's not in their interest to just ideologically, but then you take in like the material factors as well, and there's just no reason. But similarly, like if you look at a politician in the U.S., you know, there's no drawback up until October 7th. There's no drawback to taking APAC money. So you might as well take it. What's the problem? Like, you're just going to vote the same way on Israel issues regardless. But now I mean, I'll give an example. Like we
Hmm.
cite very briefly in the thing. I think his name was Brian Baird. He was a guy in Congress for the Democrats like long ago. He's retired now. As soon as he retires, he comes out and he goes, "APAC's a fucking problem, guys." Like, there's so they. It sounds like a small amount of money, but like $200,000 in a congressional race is huge because he's like, if they
Yeah.
give that money to me and not my opponent, that's a $400,000 difference in raising money. Like that can be a total game changer, especially if you're in a swing state. Um, APAC put like $12 million into beating Cory Bush of all people. Like it's just like there's so much money. So people are going to keep taking that money until the costs of taking it are higher than the benefits, right? $400,000 to swing a race is a lot.
Israel because of
But
some sort.
if you are being hounded at every town hall you go to, from I saw this for Jake, I think his name's Auchincloss. He's like a Democrat. He had, I want to say like 10 people at a town hall went up to the mic and asked him about taking APAC money. And you could tell he's like sweating because he never thought
Yeah.
this day would come. And
That's
that's all
become
of
my
them.
favorite hobby, watching Democratic politicians getting questioned about taking APAC money.
Exactly. And so like the game is totally changed. Like APAC is already trying to find ways to funnel their money through other means to get it to people. But like people are going to catch up to them, right? So it's become very reasonable to me to think that you can make supporting Israel a political loser in America, let alone like in Canada or the UK or wherever. Like it's just you see how many people are in the streets protesting for this stuff. Like I don't see how one can look at this and say, oh, it's their fault because Kamala lost. And it's like it was made abundantly clear to Kamala Harris that switching from supporting Israel to supporting Palestine was the shrewd political move. That would have won her votes, not lost her votes.
Yeah.
And she decided that, whether it was her ideological commitment to Israel or, the APAC money or whatever, funding she's receiving for being pro-Israel, she decided that that was more important. Like, I don't people bring up this thing. They're like, oh, well, what if they had lost some constituencies by not supporting Israel? I'm like, guys, the polls tell us that they would have gained more than they lost. Like, this is just, I don't see how that's even debatable at this point. There's just not that many
It's
people that
so
were
funny.
voting. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, but like it's so funny to me. And goddamn, I could talk about this shit for hours. But it's like you get liberals that say that you need to do certain things to go with the polls. You need to be against trans people. You need to be in favor of like a strong immigration border wall, essentially, because that's what goes with the polls. But then you see the issue of Israel and Palestine, and they're like, "What are polls? I've never heard of that thing." Like, I'm getting money from these people. Why would I listen to the polls? Like,
Well, and that the thing that drives me nuts about that is I'm like, guys, Palestine made up all of this ground in the polls without any political advocate acting on their behalf. Like the Democrats were not pro-Palestinian. They are like actively always trying to frame them as being, Hamas.
right?
They have no interest in like they never defend the PA, which I don't like the PA either. But like there is like a Palestinian alternative to Hamas, and which Democrat has ever even mentioned a boss by name, right? Like these guys don't advocate for Palestinians in any way, and yet even still, like just grassroots, they have taken over the issue. So even if, like you said, like Democrats love chasing polls instead of actually advocating for issues, but in this case, they don't do it anyway. And like this was, I kind of got into this with people in the comments where they were like, well, why would people not vote for Kamala over an issue that Trump is going to be worse about? And I was like, guys, the whole point was that people were banking on Kamala not making the decision that she did. The whole point of saying, I'm not going to vote for you if you do this thing is that she's not going to do the thing so that she'll win.
Right.
But she didn't. Like she made a decision, right? Joe Biden would have made the same call. They just had no interest in taking this side of the issue. They were just happy to say that, they wanted to let more humanitarian aid in, whatever. Like they had no interest in actually ending the genocide.
Yeah, and like yeah, we can talk about like the theory of voting and the uncommitted movement. I'm sure you saw like the Zoran versus Cuomo debate where he's like, Zoran said to not vote for Kamala Harris, and he's like, I said to not vote for her in the primary. And then he
Yeah,
gets
he said, let's
accused.
vote for Joe Biden against Dean Phillips. Like,
Yeah,
what the hell are you talking about?
and but I do think that it's to try to like bring it back around to what's happening now. Like, obviously, Republicans have control of Congress. They're not going to ban weapon sales to Israel anytime soon or do any kind of sanctions or anything. Um, but I do you see like the popular protests, more and more Palestinian flags showing up at protests like the No Kings rally. Still people like yelling at Kamala Harris, calling her a genocide supporter when she's doing her book tour. Um, and people calling their Congress people. Do you see this as kind of like all connect? Do you see this as having an effect or potentially having an effect in the near future? Do you see the ceasefire, essentially hostage negotiation deal that Trump got? Do you see that as being an outcome of all of this public pro-Palestine sentiment that we're experiencing in this country right now?
Um, yeah, like I guess there's like two questions there, like what
Yeah.
the outcome is going to be of all of this, and then the ceasefire thing. I guess the biggest thing I've seen recently that like convinced me beyond the stuff I mentioned earlier about you know everyone kind of pivoting when all the starvation stuff started to come out, but did you hear about Seth Moulton? He's like a Democrat. I think he's running to like unseat um what's his name?
I've
Ed
heard of
Markey.
him.
Yeah, so he's like a centrist,
Oh
right?
yeah,
And
this.
he
Oh
came
yeah,
out
this
and said
guy.
that yeah, he came out and said he's not going to accept APAC money in the primary. Um, and it's one of those things where um, you ever heard that like thing about how it had to be Nixon that goes to China and like builds the relationship with China because like the Democrats couldn't do it because they would be seen as like soft for opening the door to China, but like
Oh yeah.
Nixon, the hardcore anti-communist, because he did it, that like opened the floodgates. Like okay, this is now acceptable. I think it's kind of a similar thing with centrists finally having to like turn their back on APAC or like
Interesting.
we decided there was
Because
like another centrist guy who kind of led the charge on the arms embargo to Israel, which obviously the vote they lost. Like only
yeah,
half the Democrats voted for it. But the fact that like those guys were the ones coming out and saying, okay, like we're done with this. Like this is not popular anymore. And like we mentioned in the postscript, like young Democrats coming out and saying we don't support arming Israel anymore. Um, I think all that stuff's just going to keep building. I
that's
don't.
interesting. So you think like the
Yeah,
guys that have their centrist bona fides, like, oh, I'm not a radical Islamist or anything like that. They've earned the political capital to be able to spend that and be like, I'm not taking APAC money, and I think that's an issue.
man. I like at this point, I just don't think obviously Israel has some sort of leverage here. Like they do have a lot of like organized money that they can deploy.
Hmm.
But, looking around and seeing like Zoran running for mayor in the most Jewish city in America
Yeah.
and doing perfectly fine with the Jewish community. Like I don't think he's going to win the Jewish vote in the the general, but in the primary, he did win the Jewish vote. Supposedly, Andrew Cuomo said he won the Jewish vote in
Yeah.
the primary.
And I think
Um,
polling's been like 50-50. He's either leading in the Jewish vote or like in second place with the Jewish vote. So yeah, you're right. Seems to be
and
doing fine with the Jewish vote there.
yeah, and Andrew Cuomo has made it his entire campaign to be like, yeah, Zoran's basically Hitler. Like
I
and
know.
it's just not working. So it's I don't see how Israel can get this back. Like I just don't understand how you come back from this when, just from my own experience, like my partner and I were walking down the street one day and there was a pro-Israel like rally going on. It was like, I don't know, maybe 100 people, not that many of them.
Hmm.
And they were, holding up signs like bring the hostages back or whatever. This was like a couple days after Netanyahu proposed a hostage deal. Like they pretended it was a US sponsored deal, but it was actually Netanyahu's plan. Hamas accepted it, and then Netanyahu walked away from the table anyway because he
Oh yeah.
didn't, like, he doesn't want the hostages. Right? It wasn't a priority for him. He wanted to keep doing the genocide. So I was like, you know, blown away that none of these people seem to know that. But this small rally, I'm like walking down the street, and absolutely everyone I saw was like disgusted by these people. Like there was just no one on the street like yelling out support or anything. Meanwhile, like by my apartment, there's like once a week these like Palestinian demonstrators that will like show up and just like have signs that say stop the genocide, whatever. And people are honking at them. People are like waving. People are taking the flyers from them. Like it just in my own experience, I just don't see the vibes for Israel whatsoever anymore. So I think sooner or later, like it's got to break. The dam has to
Yeah.
break on that front. I don't know when it's gonna fully go because it seems like the politicians are the last class like holding out for them, but it has to go at some point. If these guys are saying they're not going to take APAC money anymore, they see that like the political consequences are stronger. Like the popular support is more important than the money for probably the first time in decades.
Right. Yeah, and at the end of the day, these politicians care first and foremost about maintaining their position of power. And
Exactly.
if they think that they're going to lose it by supporting Israel, maybe that can actually change. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I really do appreciate that. It's just like because people have been criticized for, I mean, the No Kings protest. You see the reaction of that from conservatives, and they're like, these people are all losers. They're just like people that have nothing going on in their lives, or they're paid actors. And it's like you also see college kids maligned as being anti-Semitic, and it's the conservative stereotype of a college kid, like a college pink-haired lib, like social justice warrior, that's just like crying for people that they say would like execute them or cut their heads. Oh, Hamas would cut your head off. You're gay or you're trans or whatever. They'd kill you. Why are you protesting for them? Yeah, it's like the stereotype is they're completely silly. They have no idea of the world. When in reality, I think that it actually does have a big impact on politicians, and the more that people do it, I think the bigger that impact is. So I do appreciate that like political optimism, because there's a big part of this country on pretty much all sides of the political spectrum, like right, left, and center, that are just being completely apathetic, that are totally checked out of politics, even more so now that Donald Trump got into office again. It's like, oh, why? And especially during a genocide, when like both sides are supporting a genocide,
Hmm.
that can lead to a lot of political apathy, which is why your message of like, no, everything that you do can make a difference. These are historical examples. This is actually going to like, we just need to keep pushing forward. Even if something isn't successful, that doesn't mean that it's not worth fighting for. Um, and I think that's like a
Or
powerful
not
message that a lot of people
successful.
need to hear.
Yeah, or like not successful right now, but I think
Right.
the tides have turned significantly, and I don't think that's nothing, right?
Yeah, I think you're totally right that it's like there is this feeling of a, a kind of an unstoppable momentum at this point, whereas it's not necessarily going to immediately get everything that people want, but it is not going to switch into the direction of Israel anytime soon.
No, I think yeah, something big would have to happen. And like you said, with the whole thing about, you know, people being called anti-Semitic or whatever, I really think they've overplayed their hand on that one over the last couple of years. I really think that people have been inoculated against that now. I just don't think most people, and it's
Yeah,
going to
for
have some
sure.
blowback. Like, I think we're going to run into some pretty, based on these group chat leaks that keep coming out from Republican Party, like operatives, uh, we're going to end up with some really anti Semitic conservatives in the coming couple of years.
It's
And
scary.
people are not going to take it seriously when these guys are like, talking about using gas chambers or how much they love Hitler. And people are going to be like, yeah, well, you guys said that Zoran Mamdani was Hitler as well. And, that didn't pan out. So why would I believe you here? And it's like, we got a whole generation of like Nick Fuentes viewers coming up soon, but we wasted all this political capital of the term anti-Semitism on like leftist college students. Instead, half of them are like Jewish. So it's just, I don't know. I
No,
think it's gonna be a problem.
no, it's concerning. And like you mentioned that you were getting yelled at in your comment section of your video for being too nice to Contrapoints, and a lot of the comments I'm like a lot of the comments that are critical of you that I'm seeing are you're like are they're saying that you said there's a rise in anti-Semitism, but that's not actually true. And
Yeah, and I mean, I get it on some level where like I also believe that the ADL is stretching these
no,
numbers, right? When
exactly.
they,
It's like the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, that is supposedly trying to fight against anti-Semitism, is doing a horrible job of fighting against anti-Semitism, and they've conditioned an entire generation of people, regardless of political affiliation, to think that when you say anti-Semitism, you're actually just crying about people being mean to Israel. And
yeah,
but like, yeah, take it away, take it away there, because you've defended yourself in the comment section a bit.
yeah. I mean, the gist of what I was going for was, the argument I was making in the video was specifically that, if anti-Semitism has increased, and this is something that Norman Finkelstein kind of gets into in one of his books, Beyond Chutzpah. He talks about, he spends a lot of time on the anti-Semitism thing because
Hmm.
he basically makes the case that, yeah, if we do take these numbers at their face, and he does obviously go into all these incidents of anti-Semitism that are not really that, but he goes into the argument of if that's true, and I do believe on some level that it is true. There's certainly more anti-Semitism online that I see. Part of that probably just Elon not banning anyone anymore, but I absolutely have seen these ideas of Jews control the government, like whatever.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
if we believe that the rise in anti-Semitism is real, like can we not then acknowledge that that's Israel's fault? Like if Israel carries out a genocide and that makes people more anti-Semitic, isn't that more reason, if we're concerned about anti-Semitism, to actually rein in Israel even more? Because it doesn't seem to me that Israel cares all that much about the fate of Jews that live outside their borders, right? Like when Argentina was carrying out the largest mass killing of Jews since the Holocaust, bigger than October 7th, Israel was arming them and giving them equipment. So I don't buy that they have the best interest. If anything, it's the opposite, right? The
Oh
the
yeah,
state of Israel needs anti-Semitism to exist. Otherwise, there's no justification. If everyone loved Jews as much as we're supposed to, why would you need a Jewish state at that point, right?
yeah,
So for them, it actually works in their favor that a Nick Fuentes starts coming up in U.S. politics because it justifies the existence of their own country. But the case that Norman Finkelstein kind of makes is he's like, some people would say that you can never blame Jews for rising anti-Semitism, which, that's true. You don't blame Jews as a people.
yeah.
But he's like, they extend that to Israel as well, saying, well, you can't blame, the Jewish state for the rise in anti-Semitism. And he's like, but back in the day, during the civil rights era, Jews were some of like the strongest advocates for black people. And there was no doubt that like Jews advocating for black people increased anti-Semitism that they were facing because a lot of people were racist against black people, right? So they weren't necessarily grouping those two people together. And he's like,
Hmm.
if we can say that Jews doing good things increases anti-Semitism, why is it like completely off the table that the Jewish state doing bad things would therefore increase anti-Semitism, especially when Israel goes out of its way to act as though Jewish people and the state of Israel are one and the same. When people just
Yeah,
buy into that
exactly.
framing and then conclude that they're both at fault, like obviously I wouldn't encourage anyone to take that's a stupid thing to believe, but like that's the propaganda. Of course, someone's going to believe it. It's just they're going to believe it in the wrong direction. And ultimately, I can't. I think that kind of strengthens our case as like people on the left who do not support like Zionism, that Israel is not reducing anti-Semitism in any way.
Yeah, I have a theory, and I've been thinking about like making a video about how Zionists are actually some of the most anti-Semitic people. Um,
Oh yeah,
the idea that Jews need to have an ethno state and that they need to be able to do genocide in order to have self-determination, which is essentially what like Jonathan Greenblatt is an advocate of, like the head of the ADL is an advocate of. Um, you hear guys like Lonerbox and these other Zionist streamers just make wild claims that Jews have the right to they have the right to like usurp the rights of Palestinians. Essentially, their rights trump Palestinian rights. It really is gross when you get right down to it. Um, and then when we're talking about the whole issue of anti-Semitism, I definitely think that what is happening right now, the conflation, like on both sides, it's bad. The conflation that Jews are represented entirely by Israel, and a criticism of Israel is an anti is equivalent to an anti-Semitic remark, is bad because it makes it harder for leftists to actually criticize Israel and I guess cleanly criticize Israel. And it also makes it easier to be anti-Semitic. Like it really is a
100%.
double-edged sword. But then I also struggle to think about it, and I'm like, yeah, this is going to be bad. It's bad for Jewish people already, and it's going to be bad even further down the road. But then on the other hand, it's like, but then again, people being yelled at because they're wearing the Star of David, or Hasidic Jews like worried that they're going to be criticized for supporting Israel. Like, let's say they're in New York and they're yelled at for being Israel supporters. Is that really the story that we want to be centering right now? And I'm not like, this isn't a reproach to you or anyone else who talks about anti-Semitism, because it is an important issue. But I do think that the idea of anti-Semitism gets brought up as a replacement for talking about Palestinian suffering a lot in this country. In pretty much every instance of the mainstream media talking about Palestinian suffering, it always has to be juxtaposed next to Jewish people suffering or Israeli suffering. Um, every single time it's brought up, and that's just like a phenomenon that I notice. And I do try to talk about both in my content, but it's just something that's unavoidable. I would say. One thing that I find interesting though, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Have you watched the anti-Zionist conservatives at all? Have you exposed yourself to content creators like Candace Owens' recent content, or Nick Fuentes' recent content, or like the whole conspiracy of like Charlie Kirk is going to break away from Israel?
Yeah,
Have you exposed yourself to that at all?
a little. I've seen a little bit of Candace Owens stuff. I can't stand her, so I can't watch too much of her. But like I see a lot of like Dave Smith, right? Like he
Oh
gets
yeah.
a lot of play. I don't watch Nick Fuentes for obvious reasons. I have seen some clips of him though, so I'm like vaguely familiar with the anti-Zionist right, but I'm curious to know where you're going with it because yeah,
Well,
it's an interesting kind of world over there.
it's so interesting, and I got into an argument with a friend that I have. Like, he's not on YouTube or whatever. He's just my friend from high school, and essentially the argument was, if these people are being turned against, like if these conservative viewers of people like Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes are being turned off Israel, and you have manifestations of that in the Republican Party, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, or I don't know who's the libertarian in the Republican Party. Uh,
Rand Paul.
Rand Paul. Who is it? Massey is the guy
Oh
who's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's more libertarian coded, right? And I think I don't know, he might be against Israel. I am not
I think he
100%
is. I
sure.
think he's never taken any APAC money for
Yeah, I
sure.
think that might be the case. So you have some manifestations of the let's I don't know about Massey, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is pretty I'm pretty comfortable saying she's just anti-Semitic. She's completely bought into Jewish conspiracy theories. Um,
Oh yeah.
but like, is that a net positive thing right now? Because it's literally just making people anti-Semitic and then being like, there's a Jewish state here, let's not give it money. And if
Yeah.
the end result is kind of similar to what leftists want, right? To not give Israel money, but it's being built on a completely rotten base. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I personally feel like conservative anti-Zionists, I'll just put that in air quotes, really just
Yeah.
like anti-Semites, conservative
Yeah.
anti-Semites, I think, and this was my argument with my friend, I think that conservative anti Semites are not effective in reducing the amount of support Israel's getting from the United States because at the end of the day, they don't care about Palestinian suffering. They just care about like fighting against the Jews. And I really think that's a key difference between the right and the left anti Israel sentiments. Leftists actually care about Palestinian suffering. Conservatives could not care less about Palestinian suffering. But I don't know. What do you think? What has kind of been your experience with the anti-Semitic right or like the anti-Israel right?
Yeah. I think I will say the only Palestinians they do legitimately seem to care about is Christian Palestinians. Like they always hedge it with that. They'll always be
Okay,
like, I
that's
can't
fair.
believe Israel blew up like a Christian church in Gaza.
But I feel like
Um,
they think it's like white people that live in Gaza. It's like
I think
missionaries.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there's that, but I do think that they'll take some brown Christians too. Like Candace Owens has been on this crusade
That's true.
about the Soviet Union supposedly killing like 100 million Christians or something like that. Like,
Oh
I,
yeah.
complete not. But that's the thing. Like, she centers that like, she doesn't say it outright, but she's like, oh, this like the Jewish Comintern was like killing all these Christians.
Jesus
Um,
Christ.
yeah, like she's like, oh, I went to Georgia, like Eastern Europe, Georgia, and they all told me that Stalin was actually Jewish and not Georgian. And it's like, all right,
Yeah.
whatever you say, Candace. Um, but yeah, no, I don't think it's like I say in the video, I don't think that leftists should canoodle with the anti-Semitic right. I don't think it helps us in any way. I do think that like as far as Congress goes, I don't think that someone like if Marjorie Taylor Greene votes against aid for Israel or Thomas Massey votes against aid for Israel. I've seen people trot this out before. Like I think it was the Iron Dome. That's when Marjorie Taylor Greene came out and was like, "I'm not going to fund the Iron Dome.
Oh
They have free
yeah.
healthcare over there. They can pay for it themselves." And there was this huge debate online between like liberals and leftists because AOC voted I think she voted in favor of the Iron Dome, or she defended the Iron Dome funding.
Yeah.
And people were like, "Well, yeah, if she's going to run for Senate or run for president in 2028, she can't be caught on a bill that has like Marjorie Taylor Greene." I'm like, "Okay, that's fucking stupid. Like, we shouldn't be like boosting Marjorie Taylor Greene, or we shouldn't be talking about how Candace Owens is right about Israel or Nick Fuentes is right about Israel because they're not right. They're on the substance. They're
Yeah.
not right about anything they say about it." But a vote's a vote. Like if Marjorie Taylor Greene wants to cut Iron Dome funding, like that's a win. Like let's just vote. If she's right on the vote, we don't have to do this guilt by association thing. Um, so I guess that's where I land on it. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't hang out with Candace Owens. I don't have anything nice to say about her at all. But as I
Yes.
welcome just simply the vote in Congress. But like that said, I would still hope that I'd rather have a liberal in Congress over Marjorie Taylor
Right.
Greene or
Exactly.
Thomas Massey, whoever. But if they're there and they're not going anywhere, sure, let's take the win on the arms to Israel, right?
Yeah, I guess it's just like, do you think that obviously, fuck hanging out with people like that? Like, these people are some of the worst people I can think of. But do you think that rhetoric like what Candace Owens is espousing, basically oh, Israel killed Charlie Kirk, here's the proof, and it's just like a bunch of anti-Semitic jokes in a text message. Charlie's
Yeah.
literally like, like, dude, aside from this whole thing of like, is anti-Semitism on the right contributing to a ceasefire in Israel, which is what my question is. Can we talk about can we talk about this conspiracy theory where Candace Owens, I don't know how much you've looked into this, but Candace Owens releases text from Charlie Kirk, and the texts say, all of these Jewish donors hate me now because I've been criticizing Israel. And then he's like, these Jews really live up to the stereotypes. Then the next text is, because of the way these donors are treating me, I'm forced to not support Israel anymore. He's like, you are just, first of all, admitting to being an anti-Semite, just be like, oh yeah, these people fit all of the stereotypes. And then second of all, you're admitting to being a paid propagandist. Why is this something that Candace Owens thinks puts Charlie Kirk in a good light? He's like, because I'm not being paid anymore, I can't support Israel. It's
And I mean,
insane.
he kept supporting Israel. Like
He
the
did.
thing is, like Charlie was pretty obviously an anti-Semite. Like
Oh
um,
yeah.
he had that thing a few years ago where he was talking about like, oh, Black Lives Matter, like all these like liberal movements are funded by Jewish billion. Like he said, Jewish billionaires, liberal. Yeah, I think he said
Yeah.
liberal Jewish billionaires. But like, come on, man. Like
And then a few
that's
years
the whole
later,
game.
he's like, "Oh, well, I guess I'm being funded by Jewish billionaires."
Well,
Oh, they really
exactly.
fit the
He supports
stereotype.
the right wing billionaires funding him were fine, but the left wing Jewish billionaires are a
Yeah.
problem. But like that's the whole stereotype, right? Is that like the cosmopolitan, rootless elites, like triple brackets
Oh
around
yeah.
it.
Like as recent as last weekend, they're like George Soros is paying protesters.
Exactly. Yeah, it's never
What
going to go
are
away.
we?
Well, they already started pivoting before he died. They've already started saying that his son is the one funding all these people now.
Yeah.
So it's never going to end. Yeah, no, the Candace Owens thing, I was considering doing something on the Charlie Kirk assassination, but like for the same reason that, this ContraPoints video came out like 2 months after the whole controversy, I was like, oh, this Charlie Kirk thing would require more research because I'd have to go down all these right wing rabbit holes and like they're changing the theories every day. There were a bunch of theories that Charlie Kirk was still alive. Like it's the amount of
God.
stuff out there was crazy. So I was like, I'll leave it to like the True Anon podcast or something
If you
to
ever do
figure this
make a
out for
video
me.
about it, you just need to find every single AI generated image of Charlie hanging out with Jesus in the afterlife,
Oh
and just
man,
like have that be a slideshow on your video for the be real.
him and Harambe, Robin Williams, the whole
So dumb.
thing. Like, no, it was crazy. I never. I was always so baffled by that when people were like, he was actually just about to turn. I'm like, guys, Charlie Kirk has devoted his life, like the last 10 years of his life, to saying that Israel is our strongest ally. And you think that he was just going to turn like that? Like, there's no way. Because it would completely discredit him, right? Like,
Yeah.
all these guys who are like, they're like soft pivoting away from Israel, but like they're still playing both sides that if somehow, Israel were to get their good PR back, they can always come back and be like, hey, I was just criticizing, this specific thing that Netanyahu did. I've always loved Israel. Like it's crazy.
Hmm.
Like Charlie Kirk was about to release a book about how he was gonna like keep Shabbat, right? How Dennis Prager convinced him to, celebrate Shabbat because he loves Judaism so much. Like I just don't think that's the guy
Jesus
that's gonna
Christ.
turn on Israel.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, as you're describing it, I'm just thinking about all of the sheer amount, the sheer power of the institutional backing of Israel. And people do want to act like, you know, not a single Palestinian life was saved, not one less bomb was dropped due to all of the activism. But I think a more optimistic way of looking at it is kind of what you mentioned earlier today, where this would arguably be one of the greatest grassroots movements, like a completely leaderless movement, no representation of the movement. I mean, Rashida Tlaib said from the river to the sea, she got censored by Congress immediately. Just mm, like gagging people at every turn for speaking out against this. And
Yeah.
you still see now that there's one of the most popular politicians in the country being an outspoken advocate of like arresting the leader of Israel and holding Israel to the same standards as Hamas, which still the news anchors that are interviewing him are appalled by that. But it really is an outcome of people's activism, the same kind of activism that people like Contrapoints and Destiny have been criticizing. So yeah,
Yeah.
I
I think
do.
there was there was a poll that came out that said, I think it was Zoran's strongest issue was affordability, right? That's like
Mhm.
the big cornerstone of his campaign. But I think it was like his second strongest issue was Israel Palestine. Um, and everything else was like pretty close behind it. But I was like, this poll, at the very least, seemed to show that like him being far more outspoken in his criticism of Israel than just about anyone else in mainstream politics in America. And it doesn't poll badly at all. Like it's the worst you could say is that it's not like a huge leap above anything else, but it's certainly not a loser like people made it out to be for so long. So I think, yeah, there's definitely been a huge shift there. And the fact that this was getting brought up in every interview he did anywhere, people were bringing up like the worst possible quotes to hit him with, and it still hasn't budged his polls like at all. Like I think that says something,
Yeah,
especially in the most Jewish city in America, right?
yeah, I totally agree. Okay, um, well, how are you feeling? Do you have to head off soon?
I probably should sign off soon, but if you had any final thoughts or questions, I can knock them out as quick as possible, and then I'll
Okay,
skedaddle.
well, yeah, I don't want to keep you too long, and I think that's like a pretty good point to end it on. Like, just talking to you really did put it into perspective that it's like, yes, this has been a pretty much just completely leaderless, absolutely no institutionalized power movement. And at this point, it seems like it could be political suicide to take APAC money. I don't know if you've seen like the I've Had It podcast, but like the people on the
Oh
I've Had
yeah.
It podcast are just reaming every kind of Democratic politician they can get their hands on. Um, Josh Shapiro was asked about his APAC money a few days ago on the Breakfast Club podcast. So yeah, it just does seem like it is an increasingly untenable position to take money associated with Israel. Um,
Yeah, I think that Democrats are kind of in that spot that a lot of Republican representatives were in after 2016, where the base was shifting towards that like populist right kind of movement, and they were still a lot of them were still kind of stuck in that Mitt Romney mindset where they're pro business, but you know not as outwardly racist as some of the base wanted them to be. And look where we're at now, right? The entire party has like bent the knee to Trump, and they're all on board with
yeah,
that sort of thing. They're just blowing up boats of people off the coast of Venezuela now, saying they're drug traffickers, and then that's that. Um, I think that the Democrats are going to find themselves in a very similar situation, but a lot less stupid. Like it's going to
oh
be
my god,
like the I've Had It podcast where they bring people on and say, I don't understand. Like, why can't you call Netanyahu a war criminal? Why can't you call it a
yeah,
genocide? Why are you accepting APAC money? And like, Democrats have just never, because they've been avoiding that independent podcast sphere for so long, and they decided after this past election that that's the reason they lost, which, I don't know if that's entirely true, but I'm happy if they believe that and they keep
hmm
going on these podcasts and they're going to keep getting pantsed by like these Southern wine moms who are like, yeah, I
it's
have no
crazy.
attachment to Netanyahu. Like, why the fuck would I want you to pledge allegiance to Israel? So I feel like I think this is like the beginning of it where the more that they actually encounter the base of the party, the more they realize that, you know, they've spent all the political capital they have on Israel and it's time to actually rein them in if they want to actually keep people
Yeah,
on board.
for
So
sure. Yeah, and goddamn, the future of the Democratic Party, we'd have to spend another hour or two talking about that because it just seems completely rudderless right now. But there are some headwinds from some popular support, so hopefully that let's go Zora. Let's hope that Zoran can be a good example for it.
let's strike that amendment and let that guy run for president. Why
Yeah,
not?
exactly. Um, But yeah, this was super fun chatting with you. As I said before, I want to reach out to like more leftist streamers and have people on more. I think it'd be fun to. One thing that I've been bringing up with everyone I've been talking to is I think it'd be fun to do content that's not just political stuff. Uh, so one thing I've been like suggesting to people is there is a board game simulator that you can get from Steam for 20 bucks. And I think it'd be hilarious to do like a leftist Monopoly board game night or something, or like what other good board games would there be to get political? Like Diplomacy? No, Diplomacy would actually be insane.
What's like there's like Risk, Catan. Those are the only ones I feel like I've ever really played.
Oh yeah,
To be
Diplomacy
political,
would
but
would break people. That would be entertaining though. But yeah, that'd be fun. Do you have any other things that you want to shout out? Like, you mentioned you're working on some videos. Feel free to leave it as a surprise, but should people, I'll send people over to your channel. When can people expect these new videos? They're fiending for
ah,
them.
I don't know, man. I think I'm trying to keep them on a 2 month schedule. So this one just came out. I'd like to get one more out before the end of the year, but we'll see. We got two in the pipe right now. One of them is going to be like 3 hours long. So we have like two
Jesus,
people
dude.
editing it. Yeah. So that'll be a doozy. And then the other one we just recorded this week. So we have someone else working on that. So maybe that one will come out in December.
All
But
right. Well, yeah, and in the meantime, I'd love to have you back on the stream at points. This was a lot of fun chatting with you, and I feel like we just kind of scratched the surface of things. Um, but yeah, also if you're streaming more, I'll keep an eye out for that too.
hell yeah, man. Yeah, if people want to check out our stuff, burn these books on YouTube, subscribe to the Patreon. We got regular stuff on there. Usually once a month we put something up there, either early content or podcasts where we just shoot the shit like this. So yeah, would love to yeah, happy to come back sometime if probably if we drop another video and I have something to actually talk
Yeah.
about. But yeah, let me know, man.
All right, sounds good. All right. Well, anyway, thanks for coming on, and hopefully we can do this again sometime. See ya.
Absolutely. All right.